Okay, so sorry to upload this in chunks. I know it's messy. I don't know why, but I guess the presentation cut off last time. So I'll just pick back up where we left off and re-upload this. So we're talking about two-dimensional semantics. Chalmers uses this idea of two-dimensional semantics to respond to the standard objection, which is that it's not sufficient for possibility. Conceivability isn't sufficient for possibility. So the example given was that you might think you can conceive of some possible world where you come across some watery stuff that you call water. You might conceive of water being some compound other than H2O, some XYZ compound, but in fact it's impossible. Really, water is H2O, and it's metaphysically necessary that water is H2O. Chalmers' response to this is that, yes, in a secondary sense, water, it's impossible that water is anything other than H2O. But in the sense of the primary intention, water could be just watery stuff. It could be XYZ. And this is going to be important because Chalmers is going to use this idea of primary intention to sort of conceive of these philosophical zombies, of these worlds with physical reality and physical organisms without consciousness. So Chalmers is going to make a distinction between the primary intentions of the P concept and the C concept. He says that these things are clearly different, which is evidenced by the fact that we can conceive of philosophical zombies. So he says that the actual world reference fixer for consciousness has a phenomenal feel, while the actual world reference fixer for the P concept is our extrinsic characterization of our the physical ways that we are. So there's a clear distinction between the primary intentions of the P concept and the C concept. Chalmers says a primary intention determines a perfectly good property of its objects in possible worlds. What he's saying here is that just looking at the primary intention is going to be sufficient for conceiving of this physical duplicate of our world without consciousness. So he says we can conceive of this duplicate with consciousness absent through a distinction between these primary intentions, between the primary intention of the C concept and the P concept. And so Brueckner breaks down Chalmers' argument more formally, and he sort of just puts it point by point. As we go through this really quick, just note that the C1 properties and the P1 properties, these are properties determined by the primary intentions of the C concept and the P concept. So 1, the primary intention of the C concept differs from the primary intention of the P concept. 2, the C1 property differs from the P1 property. 3, the C1 property applies to things in our world. 4, the only physical property of things in our world that is a candidate for being the C1 property is the P1 property. And 5, there is a property of our world over and above the physical properties, namely the C1 property of having a phenomenal field. If you need to read through this a couple times, feel free to pause the video and kind of wrap your head around it. But really, we're going to be looking at this first premise because this is where the problem lies for Brueckner. So Brueckner's argument against Chalmers is really, like I said, it's just against this first premise. So he says that this first premise, that there is a difference between the primary intentions of this P concept and the C concept. For Chalmers' argument against the standard objection requires that we infer from the conceivability of P and not C the possibility of P and not C. And yet, this premise is foundational in rejecting the standard objection, which challenges this very inference. In other words, Brueckner is arguing that Chalmers is begging the question. All right, that is Brueckner's response to David Chalmers' response to the standard objection to Chalmers' idea that possibility can entail from conceivability. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and I'd love to try to answer them as best as I can. Thanks for listening, guys.